track. We're going to talk about how do we put our needs aside and allow God to work in us, because a lot of the times we're all about self. We're all about what we can get from things and what we can gain from certain situations. But the Bible calls us to humble ourselves. The Bible calls us to submit to the Lord. So how are you going to do that if you're always looking at self? If you're always looking at self and you're always asking God, me, how can I gain? How can this benefit me? How would you grow in your relationship with God? How would you learn to humble and submit to God when you're all about yourself? And one thing the Lord has been teaching me, like really urging me, to learn and understand, is dying to yourself. The Bible calls us to deny ourselves and to pick up our cross. If we want to be a disciple, if we want to walk with Christ, we have to be able to deny ourselves. One thing I've realized is when I started to really walk with the Lord, at first I really had a push. God really pushed me and gave me the strength and the joy to seek Him. That was good and all, but it was the early stages, and I just had that honeymoon stage where it's like you're in love with the Lord. But then it got tougher because God was starting to now work in me. He was now beginning to ask me to do things that went against me, that went against what I wanted. So now it wasn't just a relationship with God saying yes and me just loving and being joyful in that situation. But it was God then beginning to see if I truly loved Him, if I would humble myself. And one of the things Hebrews 12 tells us is, my son, do not despise the discipline of the Lord, and do not lose heart when He rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one He loves, and He chastises everyone He accepts as His son. That is something that I had to learn, was that in my suffering, in the Lord breaking me down and humbling me, it was not because He hated me, but because He wanted to work in me. He wanted to perfect me and strengthen me. But again, like I said before, if you're still looking at yourself as I want this, or if you're still wanting to gain for yourself, you will never be able to experience the fullness of God in your life. One thing in my life that I always pray about is that I always tell God, like, Lord, I want all this, I want this, I want this, I want that. And the Lord really humbled me in my relationship with Him, because I was so ambitious about my own desires and things I wanted to do, things I wanted to accomplish. And that it wasn't really aligned with what God wanted to do in my life, right? And then as I started to seek God more, He got me to a point where it was like I had to either choose. Would I submit to Him and follow His way and follow His plan, the perfect will that He has for me? Or will I continue to desire my selfish needs? Would I continue to desire what I wanted and go down that path? Because that path that I would have went on would have took me away from the Lord. And those things that I desired and those things that I wanted, the more I continue to pursue it because of my disobedience, the more I continue to pursue it, I didn't have peace in that thing. I didn't have peace in those things. And so I would question, like, man, why is this not bringing me peace? This is what I want, but it's not bringing me peace. And God will continue to remind me to follow His will, to follow and to leave my desires and to leave what I thought was right. In Exodus, we know that the Israelites' stubbornness to leave behind their desires, leave behind their mentality of the old, stop them from getting to the promised land early. In Exodus 13:17, it says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though it was shorter. It was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their mind and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road towards the Red Sea. God's will will not always line up with your desires. The Israelites wanted to get to the promised land as quick as possible, but that's not what God had in mind. But the whole point of that was to allow their minds to be strengthened and to grow so they could be able to handle whatever comes later on. But they didn't understand that. God will use those who are ready to give up their life for Him, who are ready to surrender and to fully submit to Him. Ask yourself, are you truly humbling yourself and surrendering before God?